Possible reasons why your child is still struggling to read. One reason could be they don't really have a purpose or a reason. They don't see why they're there. So you have to show them, like, why are you here? Why do you need to know this? And I did another video on, like, what is the kid's job? And their job is to take advantage of that education so they can survive in the world later. Could be that, or, you have to find what they want to do in this life. Like, do they want to be a writer? Well, they got to learn to read, or whatever it is, their passion. There's probably some reason why they need to be able to read in order to do that, even if it's just to study the subject at college. So if they know why they're there, if they have a reason to be there, they'll be more motivated to work hard on it. So that's one. Another reason why, and we're just like going very basic. We're not getting super technical on like phonics or what things they're having trouble with, because it might not be with the letter sounds or a reading thing. It might be something more foundational, like, are they just too tired? Have they ever been playing all day and you're starting your lesson late and now they're just tired? It could be that. It could be they didn't get enough sleep last night and you didn't know, or maybe they just need more sleep that night, or they had a lot of sugar and now they're on the downside. It could be anything. If they're tired, they're not going to be all there to be able to focus on whatever you're working on. So that's another. And then super basic, are they hungry? Like, did they get enough to eat? Because sometimes, like, when you get hungry and your brain stops working or you get hangry or whatever, but like, you need that fuel, especially kids. They need enough fuel and protein and good food. Their brain function is better. Those are just very basic. If those conditions aren't present, they're really not even there. So if they're not really all there, how are you gonna they don't have the focus to learn. So those are just basic things that you gotta check. So other things to check, if you're just not progressing, it's just not going smoothly and you don't know why, is something going on? You know how when you have a loss or a failure and you just get kind of deflated and you just kind of lose your momentum and your drive to keep going? So maybe there's something like that. Sometimes they're not motivated because they had a loss or a failure. You know how it is with you lose at something and you just kind of go, oh, and you just want to give it up and you don't want to do it anymore. Well, kids go through the same thing. So that's why encouragement is so important. So it could be as little as that, like they got snagged and they're kind of like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. So just, you got to talk it out with them and find out what happened, what they're upset about. Maybe they just need more encouragement. Another reason could be because it's all just too hard and like the materials are not engaging enough or they're too difficult. A lot of these workbooks in the very beginning, they go super fast. Page 1, you're doing, sounds of a letter, and then on page 3 of the workbook, you're on like a 3-syllable word. I'm sorry, but if they barely can put 2 sounds together, that's just too much. They're not going to be able to do that. So a lot of these materials are super hard. So right away, right out of the gate, they're getting all deflated, like, I can't do that. And it's like, what's the point in going on? So it's really important that the materials are appropriate and they're not like way too hard so they don't suffer that setback. One reason could be that they miss something. That's actually the most common reason, is that they miss something, they don't get it, now they're confused, and they're never going to get anything after that until they get that earlier step really good. So, and that's really the most obvious one. It could be something just silly and minor. Maybe they don't know why you have the uppercase and the lowercase, or as we would refer to them, to the kid, big letters, little letters. So maybe maybe it's something simple that, maybe they don't even know what the word, they're learning to read, but maybe they don't know what that means to read. Maybe you need to explain to them. It's to be able to look at something, sometimes it's not words, to look at something and understand it. It's like you can read a road sign. It doesn't necessarily have words or letters on it or anything. You just look at it, you understand, like the way you read lips. They're not, they're not letters right here. You know what I mean? Anyway, so maybe it could be as simple as that. They don't even know what it is they're doing. So you just kind of have to poke around until you find that step that they missed. It could be that they didn't really even miss anything, but maybe they just didn't get it good enough. Like it would be like if you're riding a bicycle and you didn't get the tricycle step really, really well. So you weren't super confident on that, and then you moved to 2 wheels. So you're gonna have a hard time on the 2 wheels. So it's similar with reading. You don't get one step, you might have a hard time with the next step and the next step. So even though you understand it, it could be you just need more practice. You know what I mean? Maybe he just needs a little bit. Most of the time he's got the sound A pretty good, but you throw in another vowel and then he starts getting confused. Okay, you just need to work on that one a little bit longer, just more practice. So it could be they just need more practice on that step. Another reason could be it's just too much of one thing. It's not balanced. Maybe you're doing too much play, too much activities, and maybe they feel like they're not learning enough. Maybe they need more book time or paper time. Who knows? Most of the time it's the opposite of that. Most of the time they need more activities to balance out all the cerebral, paperwork and stuff going on. So most of the time they need an activity. You just gotta have a balance. A lot of times, one reason I do a lot of spelling is because, like you're looking at the letters and you're taking it in and you gotta process it. When you're doing spelling, you take in the sound, it goes back out, and you gotta write it, right? You gotta put it back on the page, write it down. And the reading and writing, that's why they call it reading and writing, because don't forget writing, that's really important. Anyway, it's just a balance to everything. So it could just be that there's too much of one thing. Other possible reasons why your child is struggling to read could be, is your child getting enough vocabulary? Like, it might sound strange, but when they're learning to read, you're throwing a lot of words at them, but do they know what any of those mean? I mean, after a while, it's just a blur. Like, the word nab is used a lot in a lot of those 3-letter word short story books. Nab, do they really know what that means? It means to grab quickly, right? So tell them. So do you know what that means? And they're not going to be able to explain it to you, I promise. Maybe there's a toy sitting there. I nabbed your toy. Obviously give it back. Or, go nab that pen off the desk. Get them to nab something and actually, and it's a fun little breakup of getting up and moving around. Because if they're, learning this stuff, but they're coming across all these words, they just have no meaning after a while. They're so cluttered up with all these things they don't understand. So you've got to just check the words with some of them. Like, do you know what that means? Because that's the whole reason we're learning to read, is so that we can look at a word and we know what it means. That's the whole purpose. So you can't just teach them to read words and completely forget about their vocabulary. Another possible reason your kid is struggling to read, all it is just a lot of little elements and they work together, and what are you missing? I used to do a lot of role reversal with kids. You let them be the teacher. Do you ever notice when you're learning something, you're like, okay, I got it. But then as soon as you have to teach it to somebody, man, you learn that really well. There's this magic that happens when you have to explain how something works. You have to actually analyze it better and figure it out. Suddenly you're like a grown-up and you really got to know it. So it's the same with them. So you could have them give you a spelling test. They have to check your work. They have to know that what you just wrote is correct. You could do whenever they check it and they're right about being right, then they get a point. And when they miss it, maybe they get negative a point when you do something wrong and they miss it because you got to do stuff wrong on purpose, so they can do spelling. They can watch you while you read a book, you read it out loud and they like play teacher. It's fun. They get to be kind of boss about it and they have to pay attention. That like really ups their game when they have to be the teacher. So it could be one of those things, like maybe you just need to switch things up a bit. Speed is important. It could be you're just going too fast or too slow. Too slow is going to bore them to tears. Too fast, it's like their head is spinning. So you want to get the nice, comfortable speed where they're confident. Enough practice to where they're confident, yet not too much practice so they're not bored. And boy, without being there, I can't tell you, that's a really challenging one. But if you're looking at them and they start wilting, well, you got to change it up a little bit. It could be it's too hard, or it could be it's too easy. And you don't really know until you're there. If it's too easy, they're going to lose interest. They're going to be like, they're out of there. You can't even hold their attention because it's such an earlier step that they're like, are you kidding me? So it could be that it's just too easy and they just can't with that anymore. Or it could be it's too hard, so they're just checking out. You know how it is when you're studying something and you're like, oh, no, I'm never going to get that. And you just go blank, you just check out. You're not even there anymore. So it could be either one of those. Most of the time it's because it's just too hard for them. So you got to back up a little bit and get to their easier spot. Somewhere in there, something that you missed. Sometimes it's because it's just also boring. There's a lot of ways to liven things up. Like let's just say you're working on the sound of the letter B. Have them run around, blinds, book, block, and find the things that start with B. Or it's just getting them out and more active, and it's a lot less boring. They can also color and draw, and there's just a lot of activities you can do. And maybe if they're really bored, you just need more activities. Another place that can get kind of gnarled up during lessons is you didn't review the lesson from the day before and they didn't really get it. So you start with the new thing and they need to be refreshed on the thing you did before. So, and they're kind of like not even there with you yet because they're still like, wait a minute, what are we doing? So you always just start each lesson, review what you did before, especially hopefully you made notes what you did before, the things they were struggling with a little bit, you hit those hard, but you should review everything you did, at least briefly, or at least touch on it, just like in spots, maybe not all of it, but you should check some of it, minimally the things that they were having a problem with the lesson before. Check those, and then they're all refreshed, and then you move on to the next thing, and then they're like more here in the here and now. When a child is studying, it needs to be like a safe, calm environment. They can't study under duress. Maybe they can, but it sure is a lot harder. So a few things there. First, what kind of distractions are in the environment? Like if they keep looking off that way, maybe there's a window and there's a bird there. Maybe you need to close the blinds. Does the dog keep coming up to be petted? Maybe you can, put the dog outside, or, just during the lesson, just is the phone ringing? Just keep all those distractions to a minimum. Because when they get pulled out mentally, they're not here anymore. So just keep that in mind. So another reason kids could struggle learning, reading, is if their teacher does something that upsets them, especially like being impatient. The kid is probably trying. They're going to get it when they get it. And no amount of being impatient is going to help that. All it does is make things worse. So even if you've done it like 100 times, you've told them that 100 times, you just got to take a deep breath and just say it again like you've never said it before with a smile, because that extra thing that you add to the environment, it's hard. It's hard when somebody's not happy with you and you're trying. It's different if the kid's not even trying. That's a discipline issue. But if they're trying and they're just not getting it, you just got to back up and you got to keep your patience. That's probably like the number one thing. It's like the cardinal rule. You can't get impatient with them. It makes everything hard. And then you lose their trust, and that's just rough. So that's a very, very important thing. You got to maintain that trust and you've got to be patient. And another really, really important point is how much encouragement is the kid getting? It's so important in life. It doesn't even matter what you're doing. Like if you're at work and your boss is like, wow, you really did great on that. You killed it. You're like, yeah, I kind of did, and you feel better. And it's like you want to do even better with that little bit, the little pat on the back, wow, the little applause, whatever. It's like, it makes you feel good. I did good. People feel good when they know they did good. So it's just so important. I can't even stress that enough, how important it is to make sure that the child just gets lots of encouragement and praise, because that's going to make them go, oh, yeah, I did good. And it's very motivating, very inspiring. Now they feel good about what they did and they want to really impress you now, So it's just so important. If you're not already doing that and you change and you start adding that, you're going to see a huge difference.